My name is Major Lena Brooks, U.S. Army, age 38. In court, my parents laughed as their lawyer waved a forged deed with my name scrawled wrong. The lights buzzed overhead, the air sharp with disinfectant. Then I slid one file forward. The A5 clearance. What happened next silenced everyone. What would you do if your own family tried to erase you? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for more echoes of revenge. My name is Major Lena Brooks, United States Army Signal Corps. I'm 36 years old, and for the last 14 years I've lived in a world of encryption keys, signal towers, and the quiet, endless discipline of cyber defense. I've watched hostile code slip through firewalls like water through cracks in concrete. I've built defenses layer by layer, knowing that one weak certificate, one lazy password, can collapse an entire system. My grandfather used to say, "Paper beats noise, Lena." In the Army, I learned he was right. The truth written down, verified, and backed by procedure will always outlast shouting. I carried that lesson with me into every mission, but I never thought I'd need it inside a civilian courthouse. The courthouse in Fairfax stood like a granite bunker against the gray Virginia sky. My boots echoed on the marble floor as I stepped inside, carrying nothing more threatening than a slim leather tote. Inside it was a file tabbed in red, A5. Thin, quiet, unremarkable. At least for now. My parents were already there. Richard Brooks, my father, tall, silver-haired, in a charcoal suit that looked like it had been pressed just for this performance. My mother, Elaine, sat beside him. Her pearls shining against a high-collared blouse, her hands folded like she was posing for a portrait. And then there was my younger brother, Caleb. He leaned against the corridor wall in a sport coat one size too small, scrolling on his phone as though the morning were just another minor inconvenience. I'd been here before, though not in a courthouse. In living rooms, at holiday dinners, at graduations. Caleb with the spotlight, my parents beaming at him like he was the sun itself, while I was tolerated at best. They liked the idea of a soldier in the family, but only as a conversation piece. My medals stayed in boxes. Caleb's Little League trophies lived on the mantle for 20 years. When my grandfather, William Brooks, passed away 6 months earlier, I was deployed on a temporary mission in Europe. I missed the funeral. By the time I returned, I found a real estate sign already sunk into the lawn of the house he had built with his own 2 hands. The deed had been transferred, at least on paper, into a family LLC called Brookside Heritage. The managing member was Caleb. My parents smiled when I asked about it. "You weren't around, Lena. We handled it. You don't have to worry." But I did worry. Because when I asked for the paperwork, they handed me a photocopy of a deed with my signature at the bottom. Only it wasn't mine. The strokes were wrong, the pressure inconsistent. Years of signing classified logs, clearance rosters, and system access sheets had drilled precision into my hand. I knew my own writing. This wasn't it. At the kitchen table that night, my mother had looked across at me and said, "You're good at the Army thing, but leave the grown-up paperwork to us." My father lifted his glass in a little toast. To family, those who stayed. Caleb smirked and poured himself another drink. I said nothing, but that night I began building my own file. Quietly. Every photocopy, every email header, every discrepancy in dates or stamps. Paper beats noise. By the time the court date arrived, my parents had filed a petition not only to validate the transfer, but to bar me from interfering with the sale of the house. They called me obsessive, difficult, unstable from too many years overseas. Caleb whispered to neighbors that I was broken, though he smiled and put on charm in public. I said nothing. I logged each word, each date, each witness. Standing in that courthouse corridor, I felt the same tension I used to feel in a server room at 2 a.m. When alarms began flashing red and hostile packets slammed against the firewalls. Everyone else saw chaos. I saw patterns, and in patterns I saw openings. Anna Clay, my attorney, arrived at my side with the brisk calm of someone who had seen hundreds of families tear each other apart in rooms like this. She glanced at the tote. "That the file?" I nodded once. Good. Don't speak unless asked. And when you do, remember, no emotion, only record. Let them shout. We'll submit. Across the corridor, my mother looked at me with a kind of tight triumph. Do not embarrass yourself in uniform, she said softly. You didn't earn this house. I met her eyes without blinking. That's why I brought civilian attire. Her lips pressed thin. Caleb chuckled. My father adjusted his tie and turned away. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors. Probate matter Brooks versus Brooks, he called. I picked up the tote with the A5 file. It didn't feel heavy, but I knew before this day was done it would be the weight that shifted everything. The first 15 minutes of the hearing were all posture. My parents' attorney, a polished man with a voice like polished wood, framed the transfer as a family understanding. He said I'd verbally disclaimed any interest because service made me unavailable for domestic responsibilities. The word domestic landed like a tack on my tongue. He held up a packet of copies and talked about keeping things simple, avoiding bureaucratic entanglements. Anna let him talk. She wrote 3 words on her legal pad and leaned it toward me. Paper, beats, noise. When the judge asked for our response, Anna didn't rise to match the volume. Your Honor, we're not disputing feelings. We're addressing records. She slid a single sleeve onto the evidence cart. Inside were 2 pages. A certified print from the Secretary of the Commonwealth showing the notary whose seal appeared on the deed, and the date her commission expired. 3 weeks before the notarization. The courtroom, a place designed to survive centuries of breathing and blame, suddenly felt small. My mother's pearl earring caught light. Her jaw tightened. Caleb rolled his shoulders like he was warming up for an argument. The judge adjusted his glasses. Counsel for the petitioners, do you have a response to the notary's commission date? My parents' lawyer cleared his throat. We would need to verify the authenticity of that certification. It's a government record, Anna said, even. The clerk's stamp is on the bottom right. For clarity, we've highlighted the expiration and the notarization dates. That was the rhythm. No accusation, only the metronome of record. While the judge took notes, I stayed still, hands folded, breathing through the slow count I'd learned in Ranger Med lanes. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. Control the body. The mind follows. The judge moved us to witness identity. Their side produced 2 witnesses on the deed, both listing addresses in North Carolina. The date on their lines matched the Fairfax notarization. Anna offered a certified DMV inquiry stapled behind a change of address record. Both men updated their Virginia licenses the following month. The judge didn't draw a conclusion. He didn't have to. The room drew it for him. Between exhibits, my parents played to the gallery of public opinion. The sigh, the head shake, the micro-theater of being long-suffering. When we paused in the corridor for a 10-minute recess, the performance sharpened. Caleb leaned in just close enough for the bailiff not to care. You really want to do this? He said, smile thin, cologne heavy. Over a place you barely lived in? Pop liked having me around. I stayed. I met his eyes. You stayed for free cable and Sunday roasts. He stayed for the mortgage. He smirked, but it faltered. You're not the only one who sacrificed. Then show your receipts, I said, calm. Not your stories. My mother's voice arrived from the left, sugar over steel. We can still end this quietly, Lena. Sign the affirmation and we'll keep your name off the neighborhood pages. People talk. They already are. I pictured the threads I'd seen the night before. Caleb hinting at deployment deterioration, neighbors adding soft pity emojis. Stigma dressed as concern. In uniform, I had carried soldiers through panic attacks and midnight spirals. I knew that tone. It didn't save anyone. It pinned them down. We'll end it quietly, I said, when the record's due. Back inside, Anna shifted tempo. She asked the court to take judicial notice of public filings already docketed. The LLC's articles of organization listing Caleb as managing member, a bank letter acknowledging an escrow account labeled urgent family property sale, and at the bottom, a same-day wire from that escrow to a private account ending 4417. The memo line reads distribution, Anna said. Yet the probate inventory does not reflect any distribution authorized to that member within that time frame. Their attorney tried to throw a blanket over it. Preliminary moves in family operations are often messy, Your Honor. The intention was to tidy the estate, not to— Intention is not before me, the judge said mildly. Posture down, counsel. We'll stick to what's documented. It was not a takedown. It was better. It was the slow, procedural winnowing that separates wheat from chaff without raising dust. And still, there were gaps. A missing hinge here, an unanswered question there. You can feel it in a courtroom the way you feel packet loss on a saturated link. Something isn't traversing the route cleanly. That's where months of small, disciplined steps mattered. When my parents stonewalled copies, I didn't argue. I went to the clerk. When PDFs arrived by email, I didn't forward them. I printed them, checked headers, and ran SHA 256 hashes, writing the digest on the cover page in blue ink. Time, date, device. When I noticed a domain in an email consent they produced with my name on it, I didn't blow up. I typed it carefully into a registrar search. One character swapped. Registered 2 months ago. Privacy protected, cheap reseller. I took the screenshots, captured the server time, printed the WOIS history, and had them stamped by the clerk as a contemporaneous record of what was visible on that date. Do you intend to allege forgery, Ms. Clay? The judge asked. We intend to show pattern, Anna said, and to preserve the estate from potential dissipation while the truth is established. My father finally spoke. He stood, smooth as a man who had practiced in mirrors. Your Honor, my daughter misread circumstance. We've managed affairs on our block for 30 years. We're respected. The judge lifted a palm. Sir, you're represented by counsel. Sit, please. He sat. The smallest crack webbed the varnish of his confidence. The judge looked at the clock. We'll break for lunch in 20. Ms. Clay, if you have a concise way to frame your client's concern, now is the time. Anna nodded once, then looked to me. I understood. Stand when spoken to. Otherwise, conserve movement. I rose. My concern is the same one I've had in uniform for 14 years, Your Honor, I said. Integrity of systems. When a process is sound, records match reality. When they don't, we freeze the process and examine the logs. That's all I'm asking. Freeze the process. Let the logs speak. Silence held for a moment. The judge wrote for a long time, pen whispering. Then he said, I'm interested in anything that clarifies the logs. Anna slid her hand toward the tote under the table. Not for the thick binders, not for dramatics. For the thin, red-tabbed sleeve I'd labeled A5 the night my mother toasted those who stayed. She let it rest there, still sheathed. After lunch, she said softly. I sat back down, breath steady. I knew that tension from midnight server rooms, the firewalls holding, the traffic is noisy, and somewhere behind the noise is the pattern that will make sense of everything. We were close. Not to winning. This wasn't that kind of battle. Close to the threshold that turns suspicion into procedure and procedure into action. In cyber, you learn to wait until the packet captures are complete before you speak. In court, it turns out, you wait until the file is ready to be opened. The judge returned after lunch with the same quiet, unhurried stride. His robe brushed the polished wood. His glasses perched lower now, as if he'd been reviewing case notes over soup. He looked neither at me nor at my parents. He looked only at the docket, the paper before him, the lines of record. Counsel, he said. Continue. Anna rose with the same composure she always carried, a kind of courtroom discipline that reminded me of officers reading orders at formation. Clear, steady, measured. She touched the red-tabbed sleeve in our stack but didn't open it yet. Not until the judge asked. "We submit that the deed itself is irregular," she said. The notarization date postdates the expiration of the notary's commission. The witnesses reside outside the jurisdiction and could not reasonably have appeared on that date. And the financial trail, however preliminary, indicates assets diverted into an account not listed on the estate inventory. The judge turned his eyes to my parents' lawyer. "Response?" He cleared his throat, smoothed his tie. "Clerical mistakes happen, Your Honor. Family estates are messy. This should be resolved with grace, not with accusations." That word, grace, hung in the air like incense. It was the same word my mother used whenever she wanted me to stay silent growing up. "Show some grace, Lena. Let your brother have his moment." Grace had always meant erasure. The judge tapped his pen. "Clerical mistakes, counsel, do not typically involve expired commissions and undisclosed transfers." He leaned slightly forward. "You will need more than generalities." It was then that their side produced what they thought was their strongest card, a printed email. The letterhead looked like mine. The text read, "I, Major Lena Brooks, disclaim any claim to the property at 1450 Windmere Lane. Please proceed with transfer to Brookside Heritage, LLC." I recognized the format immediately. The font spacing was wrong, the alignment slightly off, but it was the email address that sealed it. One character swapped in the domain name, an RN masquerading as an M, a trick as old as phishing itself. Anna didn't flinch. "We anticipated this," she said. She lifted a stapled sheet from our folder and laid it flat on the cart. A Woy's history of that domain name. Registered 2 months ago, anonymized through a foreign privacy service, hosted with a discount reseller, not owned by my client, not linked to her service accounts. The judge raised an eyebrow. "You're saying this consent was fabricated?" "We're saying it does not come from Major Brooks," Anna said. "The registrar data proves it." All eyes shifted to me. I didn't move, didn't smile, didn't bristle. "Your Honor," I said quietly, "in my field, we don't speculate about intention. We log anomalies. This email is an anomaly." A murmur rippled through the benches behind us. My mother's hand clenched her pearl necklace. Caleb leaned forward, eyes flashing. "She's just bitter she missed the funeral." He muttered loud enough for the bailiff to hear. "Pop left me in charge. She can't handle that." The bailiff's head turned. "Sir, keep your voice down." The judge gave Caleb a look so sharp it could have sliced wire. "You will remain silent unless addressed." For the first time that day, Caleb's bravado slipped. His foot tapped beneath the table, rapid, nervous. The judge exhaled slowly. "Ms. Clay, your client has raised serious questions. At present, I have conflicting claims and a potentially fraudulent exhibit. If you have something further that can clarify..." Anna rested her palm lightly on the red-tabbed sleeve. "We do, Your Honor. One file." The room hushed. Even the air conditioner seemed to pause, the buzz of fluorescent lights louder than the breathing around me. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Anna slid the sleeve open and drew out 4 documents, clipped neatly. She laid them on the evidence cart one by one like placing cards on a table. First, a certified copy of my grandfather's will, notarized by a JAG officer 4 years before his death. Clear language. The house and property to me, directly, not through any LLC, and a prohibition against transfer without my written consent. Second, the Commonwealth certification confirming the notary's commission had expired before the deed was signed. Third, an affidavit from a title company officer, sworn under oath, noting she flagged discrepancies and that a parallel package appeared at a different escrow office, a sign of duplicate attempts. Fourth, a clerk-stamped manifest for sealed digital media already lodged with the court, 1 audio file and 1 PDF. The judge leaned forward. "What's on those?" Anna's voice remained steady. "Audio is a recording dated 3 weeks prior to the transfer. 2 voices, Caleb Brooks and Richard Brooks, discussing pushing the paperwork before Major Brooks rotated back from duty, and finding a notary who won't ask questions. The PDF is a handwritten household inventory drafted by Elaine Brooks, listing property values inconsistent with the official estate filing. A sound escaped my mother, sharp and thin. My father's hand clenched his tie. Caleb's tapping stopped. The judge's pen stilled. "The originals are with the clerk?" "Yes, Your Honor," Anna said. "Sealed, with hash values logged by both myself and the clerk's office." He glanced at the bailiff. "Coordinate with the Commonwealth's attorney. Have the sheriff's office review immediately." The doors at the back opened, not with violence, but with purpose. 2 detectives in plain jackets entered, followed by a deputy in a marked vest. The whisper that spread across the benches felt like wind through dry grass. To the families in the gallery, it looked like a storm had walked in. To me, it looked like procedure doing exactly what it was built to do: step in when noise gave way to record. The judge adjusted his glasses again. "This court will recess until evidence is examined. No property shall transfer. No funds shall move until further order. Parties are admonished. Do not destroy or conceal material. Bailiffs will remain." I sat back, my breath steady. The A5 file was thin, but in my world, thin files bring down loud systems. The pattern was visible now, traced in ink and timestamp. And for the first time all day, I saw my father's face shift, not to anger, but to fear. The recess stretched into an hour. Long enough for speculation to ferment in the gallery. Long enough for me to watch my father's hand tighten on the edge of the defense table until his knuckles turned the color of chalk. Caleb kept his jaw clenched, bouncing his knee like a nervous cadet caught lying on a report. My mother stared forward, blank as marble. When the judge returned, his tone was different. Lower, heavier, like the weight of the bench had doubled. He adjusted his robe, tapped the file once, and spoke with a precision that brooked no doubt. "The sheriff's office has reviewed the submitted evidence. This court has also been briefed by the Commonwealth's attorney. The documents and audio presented show cause for further investigation. Therefore, I am ordering the exhibits entered as official evidence, and I am referring this matter to state investigators immediately." The words carried the weight of a gavel even before it struck. Anna rose, respectful but firm. "Your Honor, given the pattern of deception and the threats of concealment, we request immediate protective action, both for the estate and for my client's safety." The judge's eyes flicked toward me. "Major Brooks, you understand the gravity of what's unfolding?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, my voice steady. Years in uniform had trained me for clarity under pressure. "This is bigger than a dispute over inheritance. There's intent here, coordinated intent." He nodded once. "Then let's proceed." The bailiff moved to the side door, murmured into a handheld radio. The response was swift. The door opened again, and this time uniformed deputies entered, not just for show, but for readiness. Anna unfolded the last page of the A5 sleeve, the one she hadn't revealed before recess. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to play the full recording." The judge inclined his head. The clerk cued the file. Static crackled, then voices emerged, sharp against the hush of the courtroom. "Get it signed before she's back. Find someone who won't ask questions. Pay them if you have to." That was Caleb's voice, unmistakable. Another voice followed, lower, calculated. "My father. Do it fast. If Lena comes sniffing around, there will be no second chances." The audio ended with the scrape of chairs and the thud of a door. Gasps rippled through the benches. A veteran sitting 2 rows back muttered, "That's enough for a court-martial where I come from." The judge lifted his hand for silence. He looked at my parents' lawyer. "Do you contest this is their voice?" The lawyer hesitated, his usual polish gone. "Your Honor, it, could be spliced, taken out of context." "Context?" the judge repeated, voice suddenly sharp. "The context here is conspiracy." He turned toward the deputies. "Secure the defendant's immediate cooperation. Phones, devices, all personal files. Held pending warrant." That was the trigger. Caleb shot to his feet. "You can't do this. This is family business." "Sit down, Mr. Brooks," the judge ordered, his gavel cracking across the silence. But Caleb wasn't listening. His face had turned red, his fists clenched. "She's manipulating all of you. She's always been the soldier, the favorite." Two deputies moved in, each taking an arm. He struggled once, then sagged as if the fight drained out of him. The sound of his protest echoed in the rafters. A son who believed entitlement was armor and was learning it was paper. My father didn't resist. He simply lowered his gaze, a faint smile ghosting his lips as though he'd rehearsed this moment. But I saw the tightness in his shoulders, the rigid set of his jaw. It wasn't serenity. It was calculation. Even cornered, he was still measuring the battlefield. My mother finally broke her silence. "This is humiliation," she hissed, not to the judge, not to the room, but to me. "You've destroyed us, Lena. For what? A house?" Her voice carried, thin and brittle. I didn't answer. I'd learned long ago that silence cuts deeper than rebuttal. The deputies led Caleb and my father out first, their shoes heavy against the polished wood floor. My mother trailed behind, pearls rattling like loose ammunition. The judge cleared his throat, the gavel resting idle on his bench. "This matter will reconvene once state authorities complete their review. Until then, the estate remains frozen. Major Brooks, the court acknowledges your service and your standing. You've acted with discipline." Discipline. The word hit me harder than any praise. Not victory, not vindication, just discipline. Exactly what had carried me through every deployment, every unseen fight. When the courtroom emptied, I sat for a moment longer, the wood of the bench cool under my palms. The A5 file lay closed now, its red tab stark against the pale oak. Small, ordinary, yet it had shifted the ground beneath all of us. Outside, the air was sharp with late autumn. Reporters waited by the steps, microphones angled, questions ready to pounce. I kept my eyes forward, my stride measured. The deputies weren't just escorting my family. They were escorting an entire lie out of daylight. I thought of something my first commanding officer once told me after a messy exercise. The moment the evidence hits the table, the game changes. Up until then, it's all noise. Noise had filled my life for years, but the A5 file wasn't noise. It was signal, and it had just detonated. The courthouse emptied, but the fight didn't. It simply shifted fronts. That night, I stayed at a quiet hotel off the interstate. Years in the Army had made me comfortable with temporary quarters, standard-issue walls, beige carpet, nothing personal. But the silence here felt different. It wasn't peace. It was anticipation, like the pause before incoming fire. I didn't have to wait long. At dawn, Anna's call came through. Her voice was sharp, stripped of pleasantries. "They're trying to bury you, Lena. The file rattled them hard. Now they're playing dirty." She forwarded me a link. A local news outlet had run a special piece, quoting anonymous family sources who painted me as unstable, paranoid, and estranged from reality after years in uniform. The article called me a decorated officer but claimed I'd been showing signs of severe combat stress and was lashing out at loved ones. It was the exact narrative my sister had hinted at for years, now weaponized and amplified. Scrolling further, I saw screenshots of what looked like my own emails, doctored to make it appear as if I'd threatened my family. The forgeries were crude, but to the untrained eye, they could plant doubt. I let the phone drop to the bedspread, staring at the ceiling. They weren't just fighting the legal case. They were trying to assassinate my credibility. Anna's voice cut back in, calm but urgent. "This is textbook misdirection. They want the jury pool tainted. But listen to me, Major. This is where you don't blink. We answer with discipline, not panic." Discipline. That word again. I nodded to myself even though she couldn't see me. "So what's the next move?" "First, we document every smear, every false claim. Second, I'll push for a protective order on discovery. They won't be allowed to leak or fabricate evidence without consequence. Third, we bring in someone who knows digital warfare as well as you. She was right. My uniform wasn't just for show. Cyber was my field. If they wanted a fight in the shadows, they'd chosen the wrong opponent. By mid-afternoon, I was set up in the hotel's business center, laptop glowing in the dim hum of fluorescent light. Years of chasing state-sponsored hackers had honed my instincts. I combed metadata, traced the so-called leaks, and within an hour, I found the cracks. The emails hadn't come from me. They'd been generated from a single residential IP address, my parents' home. The hypocrisy was suffocating. The same house they had barred me from with police threats was now their war room. That night, Anna and I sat in a booth at a diner. The smell of frying bacon and burnt coffee thick in the air. She spread out her legal pad, scrawling notes. "They think if they shout loud enough, the truth won't matter," she said. "But the truth has receipts. And you, Major, you're nothing if not meticulous." I sipped the bitter coffee, letting her words settle. She was right. I'd been underestimated my entire life, by commanders, by peers, by my own blood. But discipline isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It waits, it gathers, and when the time is right, it speaks in evidence. 2 days later, the counterattack escalated. Anonymous flyers appeared in the courthouse parking lot, warning of Major Brooks' mental breakdown. A local radio host parroted the story that I was dangerous, unstable, a soldier on the edge. It stung, but only for a moment. Then I remembered my training. Attacks are loudest when the enemy is desperate. Anna filed motions faster than my family could print lies. The judge, already wary after the A5 file, began to frown openly at their lawyers' evasions. Deputies monitored the courthouse more closely. And me? I stayed silent. No public rebuttals, no shouting matches. Just long hours in that bland hotel room, cross-referencing their fabrications with the digital trail they couldn't cover. Every false headline became another nail. Every forged file, another thread I could unravel. On the fourth evening, as I was cataloging evidence, a knock rattled my door. Sharp, deliberate. I froze. Hand instinctively brushing the inside of my jacket where I kept my ID. Nothing more. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there. Not my lawyer. An old Marine Master Sergeant I hadn't seen in years. A friend of my grandfather. His posture was still ramrod straight despite the weight of age. "They're cornered," he said without greeting. His eyes narrowed. "That's when men like your father get dangerous. You need to watch your six." The diner's neon light reflected off the wrinkles in his face, deep as old battle scars. "You've got the law, Lena. But never forget, you're fighting people who already abandoned honor. Don't expect them to fight fair." His warning settled in my bones. He wasn't talking tactics. He was talking survival. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan spin, I understood the next phase had begun. The courtroom battle was one thing. But outside those walls, in the shadows, another war was brewing. And I knew exactly what my grandfather would tell me. Stay disciplined. Stay ready. Let them underestimate you. Then deliver the truth when it counts. The smears would keep coming. The threats would sharpen. But so would my resolve. Because they'd forgotten one critical rule of both war and law. Noise fades. Evidence doesn't. The storm didn't last forever. Smears burn hot but burn out fast. What survives is what can be proven. And when the subpoenas landed, when the digital forensics came in, when the A5 file's chain of evidence stood unbroken, the noise fell away like ash in the wind. Weeks later, the courthouse was quieter. Fewer cameras, fewer gawkers. But the tension still lived in every polished hallway. The state investigators had taken over, their posture all business. The deputies didn't just escort my family anymore, they monitored them. The arrogance had drained from Caleb's stride, and even my father's mask of calm had begun to crack. One morning, I arrived early and found myself alone in the corridor outside the courtroom. A janitor's cart squeaked past. The air smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and old wood polish. It reminded me of early mornings at Fort Huachuca, arriving before first light, the base still quiet, only the hum of vending machines for company. The calm before training began. That calm steadied me now. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. Inside, the hearings grew clinical. Pages of forged documents were dissected line by line. The false emails my family had seeded into the media were displayed on monitors, their metadata traced neatly back to the home Wi-Fi account of Richard Brooks. The jurors leaned forward, expressions tightening as if realizing they'd been witnesses to a scam, not a family feud. The prosecutor didn't need me to perform. All I had to do was stay composed, answer clearly when asked, and let the evidence carry the weight. Years of military briefings had prepared me for exactly that. Precision without embellishment. One afternoon, as proceedings recessed, a young deputy approached me in the hallway. He looked barely out of academy, uniform still stiff. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Major Brooks, I just wanted to say, ma'am, my uncle served with the army in Iraq. He always said the hardest part wasn't combat, it was coming home to people who didn't understand. Watching you handle this, it means something." I didn't know what to say. Praise was never the point. But I gave him the same nod I'd give a junior soldier after a job done right. Simple, respectful, no theatrics. He seemed to understand. That was the difference now. Respect was returning. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady. It wasn't fear. It wasn't spectacle. It was recognition. The kind that doesn't need applause. My parents and brother fought harder as the evidence tightened. Their lawyer filed motion after motion, desperate to delay. But delays can't erase truth. Eventually, even their counsel looked tired of the fight, his briefcase heavier every day. The judge kept his voice even, his gavel measured, but his patience thinned. "This court," he said one morning, "is not a stage for grievances. It is a venue for law. The evidence presented by Major Brooks has been consistent, credible, and corroborated. The opposing side would do well to recognize when the ground has shifted beneath them." It was the closest thing to vindication I would ever hear from a bench. When the formal verdicts came, I didn't smile. Not when Caleb was sentenced to probation and financial penalties for his role in forgery. Not when my father faced federal referral for conspiracy. Not when my mother broke into tears at the defense table, accusing me one last time of betrayal. Because in uniform, I'd learned, victory isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the moment the mission is complete and you can finally breathe. The house at the center of it all was still mine, legally restored by the court's order. But I didn't rush to unlock its doors. I let it sit, empty, for a while. Some wounds need silence before they can be faced. Instead, I returned to base. My unit welcomed me back with no ceremony, just a seat in the briefing room, my name on the roster, and a mission packet slid across the table. It was exactly what I needed. Normalcy, routine, the comfort of competence. The gossip didn't follow me there. Soldiers respect chain of command, not tabloid stories. My peers didn't ask about the court battles. They asked about signals intelligence updates, about protocols, about the work. In that space, I wasn't a daughter in dispute. I was a major again, and that was enough. Still, I made a decision. The house wouldn't just be a reminder of betrayal. It would become something else. A place where respect was the rule, not the exception. A place where discipline wasn't mocked, but honored. That was the new term, the new order I carried forward. My family's name might be stained, but the legacy I built from it didn't have to be. The war inside those courtroom walls had ended. But my mission, the one my grandfather taught me when I was a girl, was still alive. Never let arrogance eclipse honor. And in that quiet truth, I finally found peace. When the dust settled, when the reporters stopped calling and the motions finally ended, I found myself walking alone through the courthouse parking lot. No cameras, no microphones. just the sound of my boots on asphalt, steady and unhurried. I thought victory would feel loud, like a marching band, like fireworks, like the kind of triumph they show in movies. But the truth is, real victory is quieter. It feels like breath you didn't know you were holding finally leaving your chest. It feels like your shoulders lowering an inch because the weight is no longer all yours to carry. My family had demanded everything: my name, my honor, my inheritance, even my sanity in the public eye. They threw every weapon they had, from forged signatures to doctored emails, from whispered rumors to outright lies. And for a long time, I worried that maybe noise could overwhelm truth, that maybe in a world addicted to spectacle, receipts and discipline weren't enough. But in the end, it wasn't rage that won. It wasn't theatrics. It wasn't revenge in the way my family always imagined it. It was a single file, the A5 folder, handed to the judge with calm steadiness. It was evidence, it was protocol, and it was timing. That's what made deputies move. That's what triggered warrants. And that's what turned arrogance into silence. Sitting here now, I understand the lesson more clearly than I ever did in uniform. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Discipline doesn't mean passive. And when you're underestimated, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let the truth arrive in its own time, undeniable and unshakable. I don't feel pity for my parents anymore. Not really. They made their choices. They built a life on manipulation, and when the light finally hit it, it collapsed like a house of cards. My brother thought he could shout his way through consequences. He learned the hard way that the law doesn't listen to volume. It listens to proof. As for me, I chose not to live in that house. I chose not to let its walls define me. I've started something new with it, something my grandfather would have been proud of. And that is what honor looks like. It's not about winning against others. It's about refusing to be broken by them. In the Army, we're taught that rank doesn't protect you from failure, and it doesn't shield you from scrutiny. You earn respect by doing the work, by showing competence, and by staying calm under fire. My family never learned that. They wanted shortcuts, applause without effort, inheritance without service. And when they tried to strip me of everything, they forgot the one thing I could always fall back on: my training. So if there's anything I leave with you, it's this. Never mistake silence for weakness. Never confuse patience with surrender. Sometimes the most disciplined person in the room is the one carrying the sharpest weapon: truth. Have you ever seen someone underestimated until the truth came out? Share that moment in the comments. I read every one of them. And if you believe that honor matters more than noise, I invite you to join this community. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. We post new ones every day. Stories of quiet strength, of dignity under fire, of respect finally earned. Because here, in Echoes of Revenge, we remember that arrogance can shout, but discipline endures. And in the end, it's discipline that wins.